Hi, folks. With Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk sort of about a couple of things that are, I guess, subsets of the one issue, and that is with the ANTIFA or the general sort of pro-globalist mobs, whether they're masquerading as BLM or whatever. They harass and impede, assault, intimidate, and just generally prevent the execution of their duties of the ICE officers, the immigration enforcement officers. Now, whether it's government buildings where ICE are in, or it's the illegal alien detention centres, or it's ICE raids to catch illegal aliens and deport them, particularly illegal alien criminals. There always is, or seems to be, mobs appear on the street in incredibly quick time. It just wouldn't be possible to mobilise randos folks to do something that quickly. But in some cases, you're looking at 15 or 20 minutes. When ICE arrive, there's a mob of 100 people has formed with bullhorns and all the equipment. Now, but nonetheless, I want to deal with these two things. One is the ICE officers are being, again, harassed, assaulted, intimidated, and so on, prevented from doing their duties. And there are already many laws in place to allow the perpetrators of these to be arrested and to be charged. So no problem there. Plenty of laws on the books already. So now, I'm surprised at how few people are arrested. So out of a group of 100 people that are supposedly protesting, I would argue rioting, but nonetheless, then quite a small number get arrested. I think when I looked at out of 100, there was 8 arrested. Another one, there was 70 odd, and only 2 got arrested. This is of the rioters. Now, these are people, certainly from the footage, who've committed brazen acts. Acts physically assaulting an officer, and and others you could say would have are guilty of lesser crimes. That, for example, they all stand in front of the ICE vehicle and won't let it move, or otherwise obstruct officers, or try and a number of them get together, try and chest bump an officer out of the way, this sort of thing. Now that's still impeding an officer in the execution of their duties, so that's still be arrested. Now, you may not get heavy prison time for something like that, but it seems only the most brazen of the brazen people are getting arrested, and even then, many of those are getting away. The ICE officers might try and go after someone, but they're fairly young and they're not carrying any equipment, whereas the ICE officers are loaded up with all sorts of kit, so they can't make a chase, and so these people run off down the street, and they don't get caught, and so they can get away with an awful lot. This isn't it seems the resources to go after this. Now, I think the National Guard and so on gets deployed in a number of cities. The local the mayor won't allow local law enforcement to not only assist ICE, that you can understand maybe from extreme ideological points of view, but they won't even arrest people that are impeding and harassing and assaulting ICE officers. They won't even do that. So there's a lack of local law enforcement. So it can only be federal laws get applied here. So, but there just isn't the number of these people being arrested that I think should be, and many of them that are committing quite clear crimes are getting away. There's a small number getting arrested, but only those, again, who are brazenly committing crimes getting arrested. So you've got a decent chance. I think you've got something like a 1 in 20 chance if you're an Antifa rioter, or call it protester, call it what you like. But if you're impeding law enforcement officers, you're committing crimes. So you've got a 1 in 20 chance of being arrested. Maybe not even that in the overall scheme of things. So if you're fronting up to these demonstrations, you're likely to not have a problem. Now, certainly previously, whether it was, and this is during the term of the first Trump administration, if these people were brought to trial, assuming they even got that far, prosecutors seem very reluctant to prosecute Antifa, very reluctant. Then if they were brought to trial, then they typically got a slap on the wrist, maybe a few months of sort of weekend detention, that sort of thing. But if they did get but a very small, only the ones that committed murder, and even then, if it had to be on camera, got decent prison terms. And even then, prison terms you think will be much shorter than you'd imagine for committing cold-blooded murder in the street. But anyway, so a very small number of them were prosecuted. Now the numbers seem to be a little bit better this time, and federal crimes and federal prosecutors that the Trump administration has better control over. So not ideological fanatics that think that well, they're fighting back against the man, so we won't charge and we won't send them to prison because they're doing good ideological work. And those ideological foot soldiers and their support mechanisms are widespread. There's some other things to consider as well. Now, if I commit a crime and get dragged into court, I've got to pay lawyers. It's expensive, and even if I'm just accused of something and the case is flimsy, maybe just an ideological case. The rabid ideological fanatics in the prosecutor's department these days is he a straight white male? Oh fuck, let's get him. So it may be, they want to punish you through the process. They know they're not really going to, find you guilty of anything, but the process can bankrupt you, and they're quite happy to do that, using, of course, taxpayer money to do it on their side. But the issues with a lot of these Antifa people, they get free legal aid, free lawyers. So they're organised, all the equipment, the kit, everything supplied, the training supplied, the coordination on social media, it's all coordinated on social media, and they're getting free legal aid. They're working for NGOs, assuming they're working at all, but they're working at NGOs who aren't going to hold anything against them for having a prison record, assuming it even gets that far. Now, they're detained for a few days in prison, which I assume nobody would want. But anyway, now, the idea of me going to prison, I don't like that idea. Oh no, I don't want to go to prison. But to these people, it's a little bit different. They're revolutionaries. They're creating a paradise. They're fighting back against evil that's so unspeakable that it requires murder and mayhem to cleanse the world of this evil. And so they view going to prison or being charged or being arrested as not something to be concerned about, but a badge of honor. Now, I remember there were some heavy trade union activities when I was a young guy in Australia, and I remember I knew some trade union guys, and they were busting to get arrested, and they wanted to get arrested. They were engaging in violence for the sole purpose of getting arrested, street protests and so on. And I remember asking him, well, why would you want to get arrested? I mean, you might end up going, no, we're fighting back against the capitalist evil. We're fighting back against the man, and so being arrested is like a credential. It's like something you put on your resume. Well, I was fighting Hitler, I got arrested. Well, there's a good, honourable guy, and so they have a different perception and perspective on what getting arrested might mean. I think it's terrible. I got arrested. That means I misbehaved. It means I broke the law. Typically that's what it means. But in this, unless it's January 6th, of course. But in this instance, they view breaking the law as it's just to break the law, because the laws are Hitler laws, and if they're Hitler laws, then we have an obligation to break them. And if we get arrested for them, that just shows we're some tough, hot and happening dudes. So there's some different perspectives there. A lot of these people are turning up in the hope that they do get arrested, but they'll get it. Again, all the legal bills are covered. They've still got a job waiting for them when they come out. All this sort of stuff. They probably, they live in their mother's basement and don't have family responsibilities or anything of that nature. So this is very much part of the wider, if you like, narrative or the wider reality of this. These Antifa agitators. Now, in Australia, at least, if I look at how the COVID anti-COVID demonstrations were grassroots. There was no, NGOs or international agitators organising that. It was straight out grassroots concern of people who were hurting. But the government response was brutal by comparison. Antifa, BLM want to riot, that's okay, because they serve the globalist purpose. But whilst COVID lockdowns served the globalist purpose, those that opposed them were against the globalist purpose, and that wasn't to be allowed or permitted. So the crackdowns were brutal, including rubber bullets, beatings, rando arrests. But I watched there was some quite long footage of a anti-COVID protest, and I watched the authorities' response to it. And there was special rush into the crowd and grab squads. Now, these were military trained people. I was watching them. I could see the way they walked and stood. They were military trained. And I don't know whether they were mercenaries that were hired or what it was, but they were there for crowd control. So they would watch the crowd, and they would identify people that they perceived as ringleaders or the primary agitators, the dudes on the bullhorns, anything like that. They would watch the crowd and see who appeared to have some sort of a leadership position. Again, it's all grassroots. We're not talking NGOs and so on as it is with Antifa and the like. So then they would form squads of, say, between 4 and 6, with body armor and the whole thing, 4 and 6 officers or people. And again, they were directed by, they'd have directors who are clearly military people. And they would point, okay, that guy there in the red T-shirt or the blue sneakers or something, whatever. Okay, so they sort of move slowly and casually towards the crowd, looking unassuming. And then they would suddenly dart into the crowd and grab 1 or 2 people and pull them out quickly before the crowd had time to respond. Very well done. Very, very. These were well-trained people, as well executed, and they drag the people out and throw them in a van and whisk them off quickly. So they were trying to cut the head off the whole thing. But looking at how they did that, they had sufficient officers on standby. It was pre-arranged, trained. They had a mission. And why can't ICE have the same thing? What in the United States? Why can't ICE have 3 or 4 of these grab, quick go into the crowd and grab groups, and just pull out key people, and then put them in. And if these people get decent prison sentences, then they'll be much less inclined to turn up for these. If they get 12 months, 2 years in prison, then they'll get. And the prosecutions need to, I think, be that forceful. And why isn't ICE better organised? And I watch some of these things, and ICE seems pathetically, poorly organised. They know these mobs are going to turn up. They know what's going to happen, yet they seem ill-prepared to deal with it. I don't know why that is. That, to me, is sloppy organisation, piss-poor organisation. They know that these people are coming. They know what they're going to do. They know how it's going to play out, and yet they're not organised for it. Now there have been a couple of occasions when they do seem to be organised, but not otherwise. Now, the other thing is, why do these people not fear? Being arrested and someone doesn't appear to scare them in the slightest. Now, if they, where's the source of money? The lawyer that turns up to represent them, who employs that lawyer? Who pays them? Where do they come from? How does that lawyer find out about who's been arrested or who's being detained? How is all this information? So they need to really go after the social media in this. If white people want to congregate for any reason and for supporting the Republicans, then the authorities are all over the social media finding out where these people are, their addresses, they're knocking on the door and arresting them at 5 o'clock in the morning, all this sort of stuff. Why isn't the same machinery in place to go and chase after these Antifa people? I mean, the machinery exists because it's used against Republicans. Why isn't it being used here? I don't know why. Now, if these people who are getting free legal aid and free jobs, and their jobs again. If they don't have a job when they come out, if they're bankrupted by legal fees, that's now a series of responsibilities they have to bear. And like bankrupted, they can't get loans, they can't get credit cards, they can't. So it's a huge impost on their life. They're effectively debanked. This is something that again, oh gee, I don't think I'll do this. I don't think I want to get arrested. These are going to be the consequences. If I get arrested and there are no consequences, who cares? I'll be a big tough guy at the next Antifa meeting. I turn up, and look, Billy Bob got arrested. What a fucking big tough guy he is. So these are things, and I don't know why the response is so poor from the authorities. Well, why are they not reacting, or responding? With decisiveness to these things? It just seems odd to me. If it was the other side, the Democrats, and the globalist foot soldier goons, they'd be all over it. I mean, look how they went after January 6th and all this sort of stuff. It was a vicious onslaught, and the rule of law and due legal process be damned. I'm not suggesting that, but I'm suggesting that the machinery to go after people is there. Why isn't the Trump administration using it? Or why are they going further to make sure all the funding is cut off? If there was just a single story would appear on social media that was critical of the COVID lockdown, or of mass migration, or of anything like illegal migration, the Democrat administration under globalist control was looking at all this closely, and they would demand the social media shut it down. Or deboosted it, or did something to effectively cut it, keep it out of the public square. Why isn't the same? Why aren't the Republicans doing the same thing? Now the social media platforms say, no, we're for free speech now, whereas before they were completely on board with shutting down alternative views or anything that didn't go with the globalist program. So there needs to be a real upping the ante here, I think, not to the point of law breaking, not to the point of gross illegality, but to aggressively pursue the laws that are on the book, such as arresting people who are interfering with law enforcement officers in the execution of their duties. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.